What if I told you the U.S. is pouring over $140 billion into a weapons program that experts say we don't even need, while veterans struggle, readiness falters, and democracy is under threat abroad? This isn't some Cold War relic in a museum. It's being built right now, with costs exploding and oversight ignored. Even the president has questioned the need for more nuclear arms, yet the Pentagon is charging ahead. So who's really calling the shots? And why is America bankrolling a missile that may never be fired while the world teeters on the edge? It all starts with a single uncomfortable truth. The Pentagon's spending machine is almost impossible to stop once it gets going.
Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Garamendi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your opening statement, your concerns about Ukraine and the budget issues. Mr. Secretary, in your opening statement, you spoke to the issue of cutting waste and abuse at the Pentagon. I assume you intend to do that. Is that correct? Yes? No?
We have done that, sir.
All right. And therefore, it must be your responsibility. I want to bring to your attention a statement that the President made in early February. He said there is no reason for us to be building brand new nuclear weapons. We already have so many. You could destroy the world 50 times over, 100 times over. And here we are building new nuclear weapons. And they're building new nuclear weapons. We're all spending a lot of money that we could spend on other things that are actually, hopefully, much more productive. So I'd like to focus for a few moments on one of the most expensive programs at the Department of Defense, the Sentinel ICBM, which is to replace the Minuteman III. The cost of this program has exploded from $78 billion to over $141 billion, not including a new nuclear bomb for the Sentinel and the command and control systems, which would add somewhere $20 to $40 billion. All the while, we have a Minuteman III that can continue to provide the ground leg of the triad for at least 10 to 15 more years. Should we cut the Sentinel program?
Well, President Trump is correct to point out that proliferation is very dangerous, but he has also, in his budget, ensured we fully fund the nuclear triad, every aspect of it, in a historic way. The Sentinel, as one leg of it, and that modernization is critically important. As you know, it faces a Nunn-McCurdy breach for being behind, and as a result, it has to be reviewed, but it's incredibly important. And so our budget does look at ensuring to...
Excuse me, sir. So you have made a decision to continue even though the review is incomplete?
The review is ongoing. The investments we've made allow us to continue should the review come out the way we hope it does.
You continue the Sentinel program even though the Nunn-McCurdy review is incomplete. I'd like now to move over to Ukraine. The chairman of this committee spoke very strongly about the Ukraine situation and the necessity of the United States being strong in support of Ukraine. It's very, very clear that a review of what Mr. Putin has said over the last 2 decades, that he is determined to reestablish the Soviet empire, and Ukraine is the current step to achieve that. Ukraine's security is our security, my view, and what is dangerous for Ukraine will be dangerous for NATO and therefore dangerous to the United States. Yesterday, 2 days ago, in response to Senator McConnell, who asked, which side of the Ukraine conflict do you want to win? And you said, the president is committed to peace in that conflict. Ultimately, peace serves our national interest, and we think it serves the interest of both parties, even though that outcome will not be preferable to many in this room, at that time, the Senate, and I would also say this room too, preferable to many in this room and many in our countries. Mr. Secretary, when you said that peace serves our national interest, does that peace come from a complete surrender of Ukraine and total victory for Russia?
That's never been a characterization of my statement, sir. We think peace is in the best interest, but I would point out, Ukraine is not the U.S. and Ukraine is not in NATO, and to draw that comparison is to draw one that is not correct. But we hope for peace. We believe peace is in the best interest of the United States of America, and our policies are pointing toward that.
Well, let me go back to what I asked you. Is that peace, could the achievement of that peace through the complete surrender of Ukraine and the withdrawal of U.S. support for Ukraine, is that a worthy peace, and is that peace in the long-term and actually the short-term interest of the United States?
If you look at the billions of dollars that have been invested in Ukraine, you could hardly characterize that as a surrender from the United States. So the existing military front line of troops is as difficult as it is, moving slowly. Where peace ends at the end of that, nobody really knows. But the president has worked harder than anybody else to try to get a peaceful outcome.
Gentleman's time's expired, Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Whitman.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth faced these questions head-on when Congressman Garamendi pressed him about waste and abuse inside the Department of Defense. The idea sounded simple enough: cut unnecessary spending, trim the fat. But when the conversation turned to the Sentinel ICBM program, things got awkward fast. The Sentinel was supposed to replace the aging Minuteman III missiles, forming the ground-based leg of America's nuclear triad. The original price tag: around $78 billion. Now, that number has exploded to over $141 billion, and that's before you even add the cost of a brand new nuclear warhead and the command and control systems, which could tack on another $20 to $40 billion. All this for a system critic says doesn't actually improve our nuclear deterrence in any meaningful way. If that sounds bad, here's where it gets worse. The Minuteman III missiles could remain fully functional for another 10 to 15 years with upgrades. Which means the Sentinel isn't a desperate necessity, it's a political and industrial momentum train that no one dares stop. Once billions are committed, canceling becomes almost impossible. The program is already so deep into contracts and development that halting it now would be like slamming the brakes on a freight train moving at full speed. And yet, while this review of the Sentinel program is still officially ongoing, billions keep flowing. Hegseth admitted the review hasn't been completed, but confirmed the program continues anyway. That's not oversight, that's autopilot. It's a strategy the defense industry knows well: get enough money and jobs tied into a project so that even bad press or budget overruns can't kill it. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, the U.S. is deeply involved in Ukraine's fight against Russian aggression. Garamendi drew a straight line between Ukraine's security and America's own, arguing that what's dangerous for Ukraine is dangerous for NATO, and by extension dangerous for the U.S. Putin's ambitions aren't a mystery. For 2 decades he's been clear about wanting to re-establish something resembling the old Soviet Empire, and Ukraine is a critical step in that plan. Here's where the contradiction hits like a punch to the gut. The U.S. is pouring resources into Ukraine, claiming it's the front line for global democracy. At the same time, it's shoveling even more money into nuclear programs that have little to do with the immediate fight. The logic is hard to reconcile. If defending democracy is the top priority, why is so much being spent on systems that might never be used instead of bolstering real-time readiness, diplomacy, or support for allies under actual attack? And then came the exchange that cut straight to the heart of U.S. policy. Garamendi asked Hegseth point-blank, "When you say peace in Ukraine is in America's interest, do you mean peace through Ukraine's total surrender?" Hegseth rejected that characterization, insisting that wasn't his meaning. But his broader statement, that peace serves both parties' interests, left the door wide open for interpretation. Here's the danger: peace that's not rooted in justice isn't peace, it's a pause before the next war. History shows us that aggressors aren't satisfied with partial victories. If Ukraine is forced to surrender territory or sovereignty in exchange for peace, it's only a matter of time before the conflict reignites, this time possibly even closer to NATO's borders. Hegseth's careful wording might sound diplomatic, but it also flirts with false equivalence. Ukraine didn't start this war. Pretending both sides have an equal claim to peace ignores the reality of Russian aggression. And for NATO, allowing such a precedent would be a dangerous message to send, not just to Moscow, but to every authoritarian leader watching closely. The reality is that U.S. credibility is on the line. If Washington backs away from Ukraine under the guise of seeking peace, it risks emboldening not only Russia but also other adversaries who see hesitation as weakness. Continued support for Ukraine isn't just charity, it's a strategic necessity. It tells the world that democratic nations will stand together, even when the fight is difficult, costly, and politically inconvenient. This brings us back to the central contradiction: where's the accountability in U.S. defense spending? On one hand, there's an urgent active war where U.S. support could decide the outcome. On the other, there's a multi-billion-dollar nuclear modernization program that might never be needed. One is an immediate real-world fight for freedom.
Yes.
The other is a long-term theoretical deterrent, whose spiraling costs are bleeding funds from other priorities. So what's really driving these decisions? Is it strategy, or is it the grip of the military-industrial complex? Because if the goal is genuine national security, every dollar should be weighed against where it does the best. And right now, a strong case could be made that keeping Ukraine in the fight does far more for America's safety and global stability than building another generation of missiles to sit in silos. And this is where citizens, voters, taxpayers have to step in. These aren't abstract policy debates happening in some faraway capital. They're choices that shape the world you live in, the alliances you rely on, and the kind of future your country is building. Are we investing in defense or in defense contractors? Are we preparing for the wars we might face, or just funding relics of the past because they're too politically costly to cancel? The answers matter, not just for Ukraine, not just for NATO, but for the credibility, values, and security of the United States itself. Because at the end of the day, military power isn't just about weapons, it's about the message those weapons send and whether they align with the principles we claim to defend. So here's the question you have to ask yourself: if true security means more than missiles, more than bloated budgets, and more than political talking points, then what are we really building? A safer world, or just a more expensive one? If you found this eye-opening, let us know in the comments. And don't just watch, join the conversation. Hit subscribe, because the next story we're uncovering is even more controversial, and you won't want to miss it.